Greetings. Thank you so much for joining the masterclass. This is going to be an exciting adventure, so I hope that you are ready to learn. I hope you've minimized your distractions, gotten a little lunch hopefully at this point, a cup of water or whatever you need so that we can take this journey together. So before we get started, I want you to take a moment, just take a few deep breaths with me. In, out. In, out. One more in, out. Okay, so my name is Unica Walcott, and I'm going to be giving you all of my tips and tricks and tools to make an incredible AEC internship program. And so a lot of people think of internships, they go, I don't want to do that. It's no fun. It's a lot of extra work. It's unpaid busyness. Well, I want to reframe that for you. Imagine the year is 2027. You have just finished up your program in undergrad or grad school, and you're looking for a job in another state or another country. You get an interview opportunity for the opportunity you could not wait for. You've been dreaming about this your whole life. And then you realize that you also need hotel money and flight money and gas money. And you don't have any of that because you've been working. But you did have an internship 2 years ago and a friend who lives in the city you need them to be in. Let's say it's New York. And so you call your friend, Brittany. Brittany says, don't worry about where to stay. If you can get here, I'll take care of you. Well, that's exactly what happened to me years ago when I was looking for my first job. And that relationship was a product of an internship program I'd had several years earlier. And so I say this to say you should reframe the way you think about internships to consider them as a tool that builds upon a more equitable society, an opportunity for you to use relationships and collaborations as a form of currency. And so with that, I want you to think about internship programs differently. And then I want you to set out to explore what it takes to design and create an expansive program that not only helps our industry grow and have sustainable leadership, but people who are focused on the level of quality that we all take pride in today, but also in advancing our industry, making sure that we understand how new technology and tools can be a force for good in our future. And so with that, I want to talk about my previous internship development programs. This is some of the feedback that I got in email, and it blew me away when he said, you know, there was some gratification when my daughter came home after about a week into her program and said, wow, Dad, I'm starting to understand what you did all these years. Imagine that, your kids finally understanding what you do. I know we all can't figure that out for the life of us. Sometimes it's a very creative process and things change on the fly every day. But also think about how many of us fell into this industry. We didn't know anything about this before we started. We happened to know someone and we took an internship, or for me, it was an 8-week contract position that has now turned into a decade plus career. This is the kind of impact that you can have as someone who develops a meaningful internship program. And I say meaningful because we've all had experiences where the internship was basically cleaning out the broom closet. We don't want that for ourselves. We don't want that for our interns. We want to create top-notch programs. And so a little about me and why I'm qualified to teach on this subject. I have been a part of the AEC industry since 2014. I've worked at small firms where, there was the marketing department of 1 or 2 people. There's the mid-sized firm and then the mega firm. So from 50 to 50,000 people, I've worked there in this industry. I've had 5 internships in college. Most of them were unpaid. That was frankly, a privilege and a burden at the same time. The privilege being that I was able to work an additional part-time job to be able to afford a car, to be able to get back and forth to those programs. The unfortunate part is the level of strain it caused and the health struggles it caused by not being able to sleep much. Uh, so that's what I want to make sure we're not replicating in our programs. Additionally, I want to share with you that I'm a speaker at various conferences. I'm presenting this fall, once again, Society of American Military Engineers Small Business Conference. We're talking about AI and the proposal development process. I've shared about here at RF just last year, building a personal brand. So many different talks I enjoy covering and speaking about. I'm also a certified professional services marketer. So speaking, not just from the perspective of someone who has done the work, but has gone the additional mileage to get certified and to understand the broad spectrum of our work beyond proposals. I'm also a cat mom and wife who loves tea in Florida. So that's just a little bit about me as a billion-dollar bid writer. Before we dive into how to create this program, I want to talk about some of the framework that needs to be a part of how we approach designing this program. So when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, obviously internship programs are an opportunity to foster that in our industry by building a pipeline that represents the world. But I want us to be strategic in how we take that approach. So whether that's partnering with HBCUs and making campus visits and scholarship programs at these institutions so they are aware of the profession and the opportunity to participate in the industry. This will help impact the way we, recruit in our industry and draw interest so that nobody keeps falling in like they fell off the turnip truck. Mentorship programs. I think mentorship is an essential element regardless of what career level you are at. But I know that when you are at the internship level, mentorship looks very different. And we're going to talk about how that looks different even at the internship introduction where we talk about what to wear to work, how to answer the phone. These are all things we take for granted as, long-term members of corporate society, as I like to put it. So when we are making sure that people are acclimated and comfortable, we're not just fostering an environment where they aren't mishandled or mistreated. We're also making sure that they're educated, understanding the best practices and how to show up in a space. So this includes making sure people understand their rights around, how to wear their hair to work. That's been a question that's come up, and being able to have that uncomfortable conversation and giving people reasonable guidance that does not require them to hide themselves, I think is the best word we can come up with there. But I want you to make sure that you're also mindful of who you pair your internships with for mentorship program. Who are the people who have strong emotional IQs? Those are going to be important elements in making sure they have a positive experience. So but I won't harp much on it, but that's something you want to think about when you're developing the internship program, as internships have a long-term impact on the overall development of our industry. And so a little bit more on setting the standard around office etiquette. We want to make sure they understand effective communication. The last thing you want to do is have your intern pick up the phone and go, "Yo, sup? Thank you for calling." Like that's not what we want to see. So you want to teach them how to answer the phone. You might even offer them scripts or have them sit and just observe with you. And that might be a small thing to you, but it's the thing that can set them apart in being seen as someone who is a viable candidate to join your organization. Another thing you want to teach them is time management. How do they prioritize their tasks? How do they meet deadlines and respect other people's schedules? This is not an innate quality, even for people who are longtime employees at organizations. So teaching them how to manage their time is essential. Spend time with them, help them understand how to block calendar time for focusing, how to schedule meetings in Outlook, how to clarify with people if they are given assignments that are not directly from you as the internship program director, but from other counterparts. Ask them, to learn how to say, "Hey, when do you need this back?" Or offer an opportunity or a window when you can return the material. So little things you can teach people about respecting other folks' schedules. Professional behavior. This comes with, not gossiping, having a positive attitude, showing initiative. If you are out of things to do, raise your hand and say, "Hey, I've completed that task. Would you like to review it for me to offer feedback on how I can improve my approach?" That's one thing you can ask them to do. You might ask them to collaborate with their counterparts and come up with a project that might be meaningful after they've learned a little bit about the organization and how they might contribute. Maybe their gift is a glossary of keywords for the next cohort of interns of words they learned throughout their process. I also want to make sure they understand office etiquette and workplace respect. This is a two-way street. Interns are interns, yes, but they also deserve respect. And so I think that it's important not only to teach them how to be respectful of each other and the leadership in the room and when to raise their hand and how to navigate meetings, but also to make sure that they understand that if they're being mishandled or mistreated, and I've had this happen in an internship program, unfortunately, by coworkers and actual employees, communicate that with you so that you can address it and take it through the proper channels, whether that's HR or one-to-one with your coworker, so that things can be positive at every aspect of the relationship they have. Because as much as we are interviewing them to assess if they are the right fit for our organization, we want to make sure they feel welcome and respected and valued. And so with that, I want to talk about appropriate attire. And so I think that it's important for them to understand the difference in what it's like to show up for a daily meeting and business casual versus if you were, to give them the opportunity to make a site visit to see one of the actual projects you all are designing and constructing, that they need to wear hard hats and closed-toe shoes and long pants. Also, if they're going to meet with actual clients face-to-face, they want to take it up a notch and actually put on suits and ties if that's a part of the office culture. If not, make sure they understand that that's a standard practice that may be appropriate at other organizations, even if your organization is a bit more casual. Help lay the foundation for their career. So that's something that I've done in my previous internship development programs. I have sat down, I have broke out a slide deck and said, this is what's appropriate, this is not appropriate. We talk a little bit about color choices and palettes and understanding that you are not required to wear gray, black, and blue for the rest of your life. However, you want to make sure that you are considerate of your audience and where you show up and how you show up. I mean, a hot pink suit is not a crime in the right space, at least in my opinion. But I think that it's about making sure they understand, here's the baseline, demonstrate that you can operate within those parameters, and then find out how to color outside the lines a bit to fit your personal taste. But this is an essential element that I think is easily overlooked, that should not be overlooked. I had an intern show up on their first day in a very cute short romper. It was so adorable, but it was not appropriate for the office space. And so that's something that you want to think about when you're educating your interns. These are things that you can send in emails prior to their arrival. Here's what to expect on your first day. Here's suggested attire. Here's where you can park. Give yourself X amount of time to find parking if you know that it's difficult at your office. Those are things to help them understand how to show up their best, that we often take for granted as seasoned pros. So creating engaging educational opportunities. So this is where I lean in, because I have had internships where they have wanted me to spend more time cleaning out the prize closet or filing paperwork than the law should allow. And I'm not saying that's not an appropriate task for an intern. Absolutely. If those are things that need to be done to keep the business focused and moving forward, ask them to do that. But in addition to them spending their time going through old video film clips or whatever it is that needs to get updated and addressed, make sure they have meaningful work. And so for me, meaningful work means things that are going to develop skills that are going to enable them to be effective entry-level employees in our industry. So whether that is helping them figure out how to draft their resume or to tech edit a document via a checklist, there are things that we can do to make sure that they are comfortable and competent entry-level employees. Maybe it's helping them understand how to develop project descriptions. And the idea is not for them to have this perfected by the end of the internship program. It is for them to have a basic understanding so they are capable, so that when they get that first job, their first 6 months, they should be able to have measured and marked improvement because they understand the fundamentals. Hands-on learning. I am a huge proponent of this. If you can get them to shadow not just you, but other coworkers, and this is not exclusive to just proposal development. You want them to have an understanding of the business. And so you may have them sit with their social media and communications managers. You might actually have them sit with some of the junior level designers to help them understand how our work in proposal development and communications aligns with their business development goals. Mentorship. This can be a parent that is not just you as a director. This can be someone that's a third party or a safe space to go, hey, I really don't understand. I'm not sure how to communicate with my supervisor. Give them the access to the information and tools they need via the right people who have a mindset to want to nurture the next generation of AEC professionals. Fourth but not last, you want to teach your interns how to network effectively. This is a skill that I think a lot of us easily dismiss as as one you just kind of figure out on the fly. And I want to eliminate that thought process. We need to teach them how to network. I remember my first internship, they had us set SMART goals. This is not my first internship. This is probably the fourth one, but it's one of my favorite things. And this is part of creating that fun educational experience. Teach your interns how to set SMART goals around their core goals for the internship program. And they may only have 4 or 5. And what I do is ask them to journal each week. And in doing this process for myself years ago, this is where I discovered I was doing networking wrong. I initially had the idea that I was going to network and I was going to elevator pitch and smile and say hello to every single person I walked by in the elevator. I mean, people couldn't get past me. It was insane. And by like day 3 or 4, I had a lot of business cards, but I had no sense of connection with anybody I talked to. I could not remember names, even with scribbling notes on the back of the cards. It was just information overload. And so you want to teach them how to network effectively. Give them insight into the industry organizations they should be a part of, or at least consider engaging at the student level, whether it's going to a single event during each semester to get connected with local chapters. Help them understand how to network externally as well as internally. Who are people they need to know? Walk them around that first week. Introduce them to folks. Let them know the interns are here. They are available to support you in X number of ways. And be very specific so that people are not asking them to do a bunch of prize closet stuff, but actual meaningful work. So these are sort of my core tenets around creating and engaging in an educational internship program. Make sure that there are meaningful projects. You have hands-on learning opportunities. You are offering effective mentorship that is beyond just yourself as the internship program director or host, and that you're educating them on networking. And this is a pro tip here. Make sure they understand the value of building relationships with people who sit next to them. Because just as I offered that example in the beginning of how I called one of my former fellow interns to help find my next job fresh out of college, they are going to need those same connections and opportunities. And what they'll grow to realize is that as people get into decades-long careers and they're looking for career changes or other opportunities, those networking relationships will still matter if they maintain them. And so I know I've talked about, okay, what to do. I think that it's also important to talk about when. And so this is a rough structure that I've used repeatedly. The assumption is you've got a 10-week sort of window. This is a summer internship program. Perhaps you run it in the fall or other semesters. There's no harm in that. These can be expanded or retracted accordingly. The first 2 weeks are really heavily focused on orientation. You're going to help them figure out how to use the coffee machine, how to use operate the copy machine. Those are things that we take for granted. Where is the restroom? Where is the emergency exit? How do we navigate fires in the building? Where do they need to go? Those are things that we can easily overlook. So we want to make sure that stuff is included in the orientation. Introduce them to the team. Take them to lunch. Perhaps it's lunch with some of your peers. If you can get the senior level folks across different areas of organization to come together at a point, that's also a huge plus. Orientation should also just include what are we even doing here sort of session. During orientation for some of my internship programs, I have literally taken the time out and said, okay, this is the industry. This is the product we produce. Here are some of our key clients. Here is a little glossary of about 25 words of things you need to know so that if you're a marketing intern and the CEO says RFP, you're not confused when you interact or engage. It's really about giving them sort of enough to chew on so that they can be engaged in conversation and have a level of understanding that illuminates and adds value to the experience. Speaking of adding value to the experience, hands-on experience is really important. So if you can rotate them through the different areas, not just of marketing, but the areas of business, perhaps they spend a half hour with someone in the structures department or someone who is in disaster recovery or the social media and marketing team. Maybe it's the global team versus the local team, depending on the size of your firm. These are things you can offer in real time to help them understand the business. I remember before setting my aspirations in the AEC, I really was interested in radio. And one of my first things I learned from my mentor, she wrote this on the board for the entire group, radio is a business. I want us to help them understand how AEC is a business. Pour into them the insight around how social media management and communication is going to look very different in an AEC firm versus some of my favorite Instagram and, LinkedIn accounts where, the tone is humorous and it's loud and it's wild and there's jokes. we may not be as fun and free as the National Park Service with all of their humorous jokes. And so set those expectations for them so they're not disappointed and they can have a very clear understanding of what what the career trajectory looks like in this industry. Week 7 and 8, this may be where you zero in on the things that you spent weeks 3 and 6 overviewing. So maybe at week 3, this is where you say, here's your first resume. I'm going to walk you through how to do this. We're going to QC it. And you make QC several over and over till you feel they've got a firm grip on those things. During week 7 and 8, you might make sure that you focus on mastery and parse down some of those more rudimentary tasks so that they can really focus on applying those skills that you've been helping them develop, and you can really give firm feedback so they've got a sense of accomplishment and mastery. Week 9 and 10, one of the things that I've loved about one of my programs in the past, and I've implemented in my own repeatedly, is the capstone sort of presentation. This is a presentation to whomever they've engaged with during their internship program that is available to attend. Might be your CEO, your marketing director, all those sort of essential people. And in this wrap-up session, your interns are going to present, and they're going to share with you what they enjoyed about the program, what they did not like about the program. Can they see themselves in this industry based on week 1 or, expectations set out during the application phase? How has this actual experience been different? Allow them to give you real-time feedback and for, them to be honest. And I've had interns say, look, I could not see myself doing that. And I welcome that kind of feedback because I think that it helps them to foster self-awareness around what their interests are, what their skills are, and their capabilities, so that they are not going through a career blindly going after what other people told them they should do or who they should be. And so this program structure, the first 2 weeks are, what is the company culture like? Where's the emergency exit? What are keywords I need to know so that I can have a meaningful conversation or at least understand the conversations around me? Making sure that, by week 3, you're introducing some hands-on experience and some rotations. Those last few weeks, you're really deep diving into the core focus projects that they've been assigned so that they can have skills like writing resumes or writing project sheets or effective social media content, whatever their focus is that you've decided is the driver of this experience for them. And that's also something you flesh out in the internship interview program and tailor the program a bit so that there are unique opportunities for each. I've had interns in the past who've raised their hand and said, hey, I'm especially interested in social media. And so I reached out to, the communications leadership and I said, hey, I've got an intern who's particularly interested in this. Do you have an opportunity for them to engage? And luckily they were able to write a couple of blog posts for the company, obviously with support and feedback from the leader of that area. But those are things you want to keep in mind. I've kind of talked about this a little bit. I want to make sure that we don't focus solely on proposals in the internship program. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but when you're trying to help people understand what a career trajectory looks like, it takes me back to one of the exercises I did before I started my career, where we talked about what does my entry level, job look like? Let's pick out 3 to 5, find some job descriptions. The same applied to mid-level and senior level. You're looking at young folks who are trying to figure out their trajectory. And so you want to give them insight into the core practices of what we do as marketers. And some of that includes proposals. That's a lot of our core work. Marketing and research, helping them understand how we evaluate our competitors. What does a SWOT analysis look like? Perhaps you could even have them sit in on strategy sessions for some of the capture efforts, if that's something that happens frequently at your firm, so they can understand a little bit better what market research looks like in action. Marketing planning, the same thing applies. Where does proposals fit into the bigger picture for the business development process? Why are we going after this one, but we no go with that one? Help them understand those sort of processes. The other thing you want to introduce them to is business development and client development. And so we talk about the seller doer model. What does that look like for your architects or engineers, the construction inspection and construction management professionals to go out and meet with clients and foster those relationships? What does that look like when perhaps that is led by marketing instead, or how does marketing support those things? Help them understand the business of, okay, so perhaps I don't actually go to the meeting, but I might be the person responsible for looking up on the website to find the forecast for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, finding the point of contact, getting that information in front of my leadership team that's going out to meet with people, giving them key information if there's anything that has made headlines lately, or if there is a project that is not receiving favorable feedback from the community, how can they engage? So these are the kind of little pointers you want to help them understand. And really the introduction to core practices about proposals, research, planning, client and business development, promotional activity in general. You want to make sure they understand those so that they can really have a grasp on what the future could look like here. And so that's where that rotation comes in when we talked about the schedule of, week 3, starting to educate them and also rotate them through different areas. And these can be weekly or bi-weekly engagements where you take the whole cohort and sit in a room with your social media and marketing communications pro, or sit with the structures team in a meeting. Like, these can be things depending on the size of your cohort that can happen in group settings or one-to-one tailored practices. And so with that, I want to make sure that we teach about how to craft resumes very, very well, because this is one of those core things that I learned early. And I think this is where a lot of us get our start. We first learn how to craft resumes, and we learn how to craft projects before we were ever unleashed to go interpret an RFP and host a kickoff meeting and develop an entire bid and make sure it's responsive. And so you want to help them understand how our style of resumes may vary from the ones that they are taught to write to get the internship that they're sitting in. And so making sure they understand how to quantify achievements, how to emphasize the appropriate technical skills, making sure that they include relevant certifications, but also helping them understand the layout and the writing style. I tend to give people, a very formulaic template when I do this. And so we might go client, project title, personnel role, and then maybe 2 or 3 sentences that are focused on their individual roles and responsibilities, and the final 1 to 2 sentences that briefly describe the purpose or intention of the project. But laying out things in that very structured format so they've got a template to follow is a super effective tool. And then you want to make sure that you're evaluating the work and giving positive, meaningful feedback. Yo, this is just wrong. I don't understand what you did here. Is not feedback. Feedback is, okay, I see where you understood how we need to include the client names here. Actually, this is not the client. This is the contractor. Break that down. What is the difference for them? Then move into, okay, the role. The role, you've got this very long title. I think we can make it more concise this way. And here's the benefit to being concise. Demonstrate, show and tell. That's how you want to educate your interns so they have a positive experience. Everything can always be critical or they don't know. They literally don't know. They're here for you to teach them. So put your teacher hat on and be a little bit humble and communicate in a way that your goal is for them to understand and for them to enjoy the experience. And with that, I want to make sure that we are talking about first-time supervisors. A lot of people who are interested in leadership often take the leap by developing interns. And so one of the things I found that has been especially helpful for people who are on the fence about leading internships, which is also essential to growing your program, having people who are willing to lead, is make sure they feel comfortable and confident. And so I have found that creating something as simple as a comprehensive handbook that says, okay, here's what week 1 looks like, here's what week 2 through 6 looks like, that outline I gave you, but also giving them sort of short scripts on questions about how to offer feedback. One of the things that I do when I lead internship programs, and I've given the same advice to many people, is have at least a weekly one-to-one check-in, even if it's a 10 to 15-minute phone call with each of your interns, and ask them what is going well, how can you help, and how can you help them how can you help them be successful this week? And so defining what success looks like helps them revisit those SMART goals that you set up in week 1 or 2, helps invite them to revise those SMART goals. So they discover, okay, this goal doesn't suit my big picture goals, or this doesn't really align with the organization's goals the way I thought it would. Give them permission to pivot. Making sure that they've got effective communication, helping them understand you've got an open door policy, or maybe you don't have an open door policy. I need you to schedule a meeting with me and give me an hour or 2 notice, or a Teams chat, like making sure they understand what effective communication looks like and conveying that to their interns. Effective communication is often something as basic as making sure when your interns know when to go to lunch and when to return from lunch. That seems like a silly thing, but those are part of the things that keep the wheels turning. A lot of them may have not come from environments where a lunch break was normalized, or maybe it was only a half an hour. Those are the things you as a supervisor want to make sure you empower your interns to understand. If they're not local to the area, make sure they know where some of the great places are to eat, some things that are on a budget. You might even invite them to understand how to navigate a budget. And I'm not saying you got to be a professional financial advisor, but you might just share some of your lived experiences and how you were able to save for the life that you want. Leadership training. This can come in the form of formal leadership training that maybe your company offers, or if you're sending it to external education, that is an option. But don't overlook things like LinkedIn Learning as a reasonable resource as well for leadership training. And it might be training on how to give effective feedback. It might be training on listening effectively, or how to delegate. Like, those are all the little things that you get to experience as a first time supervisor. And so it's important that you educate people on how to do it and how to do it well. Okay. So we're getting close to the end, but we are not done. I want to make sure that we are not just measuring the internship experience in the vacuum of this is a one-off experience. We want to make sure that we are getting regular feedback with each cohort of interns. And so this may include some internship satisfaction surveys where you do them formally or informally. They could be in the form of HR exit interviews. They might be anonymized surveys that you use with Qualtrics. You might evaluate, are people completing your internship program? Are people dropping out prematurely? Are people deciding to go with other companies instead when the offer is extended? Do some research, of all the interns you've hired over the last 5 years, how many have actually come on board full-time with their company or have decided to join the industry at some other point? Maybe even look, forward. 10 years later, are these people now senior leadership? What is the trajectory of their career, and is there any sort of clear impact? With that, measuring your success and impact, I introduced myself earlier, talked about the impact internships had on my life a little bit with regard to being able to have a network that helped me find my first job out of college. And that's the impact you can offer other people. But I also want you to think about the impact of something as simple as being able to give people career opportunities that may not be accessible. A lot of us find our opportunities via our family and our friends. And if our family and friends aren't well connected, that really limits our access. And so I want you to think about internships as a way to level the playing field, to be able to negotiate with HR and leadership about this. I think you've got to, set the course now for next summer's internship program. You can't wait until April and decide, okay, we want to have summer interns. Like, we're setting the budget for next year now, a lot of companies. Go now to have those conversations, get buy-in and a target date. Recognize that most of the professionals in our industry are 35 years or older. That means that we are not in a great pipeline situation to have a lot of talent going forward the way we need to. So that's my suggestion for a next step action after you get out of this class. Make a meeting with HR, make a meeting with whoever's in charge of the money and the education programs at your company, and see if they will be open to having an internship program. Talk about the benefits, talk about how it correlates to some of the tasks that maybe you haven't been able to get done, that are not necessarily extremely complex and maybe a bit repetitive, but highly educational experiences for someone who is interested in joining the industry. Provide that opportunity and say, here's a win-win. We can pay them, $20 an hour instead of, $40 an hour to do the same job and get the results we need. And we also get a potential new hire in a year or two. That would be excellent because they already understand our brand, they understand our culture. Like, no more, turnover of entry-level folks every year or two because they are unhappy with where they landed. They chose you then. So that's some of the things you want to take away from this conversation. In an ideal world, going to be able to do these Q&A live. So if not, I want to make sure that you do have access to meet with me. So follow up with Q&A for me at hello@uniquewalcott.com. This also applies for, if we do live Q&A and something comes up and you go, I didn't think to ask that, and now I need to ask, I need to know the answer. Do not hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to respond, hop on coffee chats if I've got capacity. But I really want you to think about how internships are not just great ways to build your company's reputation and pipeline. They are a way to offer deeper pools of generational wealth and opportunity because you said yes to something that maybe you thought was once icky. My name is Unica Walcott. I'm $1 billion bid writer, and I'm so grateful for your time and attention. Go out and make our industry amazing. Mwah.